And one of the examples I gave is that I met my wife online. And I don't mind admitting it, but it would be really hard for me to build a relationship with my soon-to-be wife if we never talked face to face. Welcome everybody to another episode of Real Agile or BS. I'm your host, Peter Saddington, with my colleague at Agile Bob. We love to answer your frequently asked questions. And today we're taking on one that is pretty apropos considering the environment out here today. The topic that we're going to be talking about is fully remote teams. Now, in this new reality, obviously many organizations have had to go to fully remote, mostly as a forcing mechanism and not by choice. And so here's the question, and I'll leave it to you, Agile Bob. Is fully remote teams, are they real Agile or are they BS?
Well, Peter, I think it boils down to how you answer a specific question around something from the Agile Manifesto principles. So when it says the best way to communicate is face-to-face, does face-to-face mean in person? Or is what we're doing today face-to-face? I think what we're doing is face-to-face. It's not as good as in person, so obviously it could get a little bit better. But I think it's very much in line with face-to-face communications, and I think that it would be definitely real Agile to me. I think there's no reason remote teams can't work well together. We're proving it with Zoom. There's other collaboration tools we use in our classes like Miro boards, maybe Trello boards, things like that. It's a problem we can overcome with technology that we didn't put the effort into overcoming prior to the pandemic. So that wasn't really an option for people. But we're seeing more and more fully remote teams be successful. It is harder. It is definitely harder to do because you have to actually schedule time to be together on Zoom rather than just being in an office and just walking over to somebody's desk. But I think it can be real Agile for sure. How about you?
I fully agree. I had a boot camp yesterday with the client here in Atlanta, and we did it fully remote. We had 18 people on the call in Zoom. And as we were going through the Agile Manifesto's principles, there was actually a little bit of pushback on this idea in terms of actually having face-to-face be non-relevant or not important anymore. And that was something that was brought up. I'm sure that you've had students and clients kind of give you that excuse and say, hey, the Agile Manifesto, actually this was an excuse brought up, that the Agile Manifesto was written 20 years ago and it's no longer applicable. I say hooey to that. First and foremost, for sure. But the whole idea of going remote is something that is kind of something we've had to do in these new strange times. And being face-to-face, you know what? This is better than nothing. And so one of the pieces of guidance that I gave them was around working agreements. And this is something that we talk about a lot with organizations and companies, of establishing team norms. And so one of the focuses that I had what I talked about with them is a team discipline, not only to create working agreements of how we're going to operate in this new reality, but be intentional about ensuring that in many ways that you're showing your face. And one of the examples I gave is that I met my wife online. And I don't mind admitting it, but it would be really hard for me to build a relationship with my soon-to-be wife if we never talked face to face. It's really hard to build those relationships and understand how they communicate, how they deal with dissonance, maybe how they deal with conflict, how they maybe might misinterpret one of my questions or one of my statements. And so face to face, again, doesn't necessarily need to be physical to be effective, but I think there's one thing that's important, is creating a working agreement or norms for the team to say, hey, this is how we want to operate. This is how we want to be most effective. And so at the end of the day, fully remote teams, are they Agile? I think they certainly can be, but it's going to require a little bit more discipline to be more effective. What do you think?
I agree. I think we have to be very, very careful about it. I think you and I know, for example, as each other, we know that to communicate, if I need to get something from you immediately, I can call you. I know that if I don't need it immediately, I can text you. I know that if I need it even less urgently than that, I can give you a message in Slack or email. So you have to have those kinds of agreements on how we're going to communicate and what the urgency level is, because not everything deserves a phone call. Some things can wait. And I think the Agile Manifesto is about not making everything wait, because the Agile Manifesto 20 years ago, email was still fairly new, but it was being used a lot. And you could communicate via email. But as soon as that starts to replace face-to-face conversation, you lose all the context, you lose the immediacy of it. A lot of things happen. You know, for example, I can say no in an email and it just comes out as no. But was that no, or was that no? Right. So, I mean, there's so much context that you lose when you're not face to face. I think it's really important to have those conversations, not just for the relationship building, but also for the nonverbal communication that comes out during face to face communication. I think you would know better than me because of your background, but I think it was something like 70 to 90% of communication is nonverbal.
That's right.
And we don't get that in an email. So we kind of need to fill that gap.
Absolutely. What would you say, because this is a question that came up with my client yesterday, what would you say for people who are just not comfortable showing their face online? They're not attuned to doing webinars and online communication and online collaboration. What would you say to them?
You know, that's a really good question. And the question is whether it's a fear of the camera or a fear of how you look. Obviously, these people exist in real life and they go out to the store and they buy things and they go places. So, you know, it's no different really than that. I think they just have to realize that you're among a group of people that if you were in the office, you'd be showing your face to them anyway. So we got to figure out how to get past that. And sometimes it's deeply psychological and it's going to be very difficult. And there may need to be some exceptions made for some people to help them get through it. But at the end of the day, we all have to figure out how to do things this way, because as you and I both agreed, video is the way of the future. We're going to have very few in-person meetings going forward. The world has decided that we can get by with this remote stuff for the most part. You and I both know getting on airplanes, even though we did it a lot, is something that we'd prefer not to do, it turns out. It was fun while it was fun, but it got old, and being able to do things like this is much more appealing to us. So everyone's going to have to make their best efforts on how to do this. They're going to have to figure out how to just be a little more comfortable on camera, and just, you know, you're not going to be able to be in your pajamas all the time.
Yeah, I think it might be one of those areas where the market is shifting, right? The industry is shifting. And if you want to stay relevant and you want to stay productive and effective in the work that you do, you kind of have to come along with the new reality, right? If everyone on your team is working remotely now, and maybe you've created some team norms, or you had discussions around, hey, we want to show our faces. It might sound a little terse for me to say it, but you kind of have to come around. You kind of have to get with the times, because the goal, right, of the company is to build products or services to make money. And team members are the mechanism in which value is created. And so to be the most, this is the answer I gave one of the individuals yesterday, is to be the most effective, you're going to have to learn to be more effective considering the new market conditions and the market changes. And so I don't know if that was satiating to the individual, because it's like, oh man, you're kind of telling me that I'm forced to change, but the only constant in the world is really change. And I think that really espouses kind of the ideals of Agile, is that we welcome this change. We need to respond to it appropriately and not react emotionally, but respond with thinking about how we can do things and how we can work together in this new world order of sorts. And so I think at the end of the day, fully remote teams, completely agile. I think you agree with me there, but I think we're adding a little bit of a caveat that there needs to be some discussion around how that works best for the team. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. But there's one more question that comes up in my class that I'm remembering from a couple of weeks ago. What do you say to the person who said, well, when I was hired, they didn't tell me I had to be on video?
Well, I'll tell you my gut reaction. It's not going to be nice, but my gut reaction is, when they hired you, they didn't tell you a whole bunch of actually what you're going to be doing, which is why some of you guys are juggling multiple projects, why some of you guys have multiple roles, why for many of you guys, not to be too negative, but maybe you at times felt like you were sold a bag of goods. I mean, we've all been in that experience when we've been hired, and the actual functional job roles we have are far more vast than we imagined. And so to continue to be effective and to continue to be employed there, you kind of have to roll with the times. That would be my final thought on that.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. And the phrase, and I don't know if this offends anyone, but the "suck it up, buttercup" just comes to mind. You know, you just got to do what you got to do. And the world changes, you've got to be able to respond to it and do something with it and work effectively, as you said. So I think we're in agreement. I definitely can be real agile. You have to use tools effectively to make sure you have the face-to-face. But as long as you're doing that effectively, I see no reason why you can't be very successful as remote teams. And in fact, the last 6 months have proven that you can be very successful with it.
Absolutely. So thanks, guys, for joining us in today's episode of Real Agile or BS. Leave a comment below if you disagree with us, or if you have an idea of how to become more effective. Subscribe, and obviously, we'll see you guys next time.